Hello and welcome to the Switch for Good podcast. I'm Alexandra Paul, here with my wonderful co-host Dotsie Bausch. Hi,
Hello.
Dotsie.
Hi.
Actually, I should call you Globetrotter Dotsie Bausch because you were just in Chile. Tell us why.
I went to Chile for the total eclipse that happened. And it was really one of the most extraordinary moments of my life. It lasted for 2 minutes and 21 seconds, the total eclipse.
Was it completely dark?
Yes, pitch black outside. It was.
What time did it happen?
4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, wow. Pitch black.
Yeah, it's just the craziest thing. I do understand now why eclipse chasers known as umbraphiles say that a partial eclipse just doesn't even come anywhere near close to total eclipse. I mean, it's just a completely different experience. But yours and my friend Leilani Munter talked me into it last year when Switch for Good had our Athletes Summit here in Los Angeles. And she spent 30 minutes of like this incredible sales pitch for the moon and the sun because she saw the total eclipse for the very first time in 2017 when it came over her home in North Carolina.
That's right, because it went over the states from sort of the northwest
from like Oregon
to the
all the way.
Southeast, yeah.
So she saw it with her husband and her best friend, and the very next day they woke up and booked the next eclipse, which was the one that
so
was
she's
a few
becoming
days
an
ago.
umbraphile.
She is an umbraphile.
Oh,
I mean,
she
she's madness.
Okay. Well, we're going to be talking to her too, so we'll be able to ask her about that.
Yes. Yeah. She will probably tell the story of the chaos that ensued when we got to the eclipse location. But I will just tease it with this. It was another fire festival.
Oh, is that right?
For people that know what that was.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
But you're looking so healthy and vibrant. And
I've actually come home. I've been able to use my toilet and my shower, and I've been able to eat. And so, yeah, I feel a little better.
We're so glad you're home safely. Will you be chasing the next eclipse with Leilani?
Well,
only if it's in the United States, right?
Well, right. Except maybe just specifically not South America. And I mean, props to it. Just was a really bad experience. But I think the next one is in Argentina in the mountains, and the next one after that is in Antarctica, where I will not be traveling to. And then the 2024 is in Texas.
Oh,
so yeah, that I'm thinking of going to.
Maybe I'll join.
Maybe you will join me.
Great. Well, we are so glad that you're back, and
me too.
Well, our next guest is in Singapore, and the sun is definitely not shining right there right now because it happens to be almost 4 a.m. there. So very much thanks to Luke Tan for getting up and being part of our podcast today. So Luke lives there with his wife and his business partner, Emily, who's a plant-based chef and an ultra runner, and they both have a daughter whom they are raising vegan. And Luke is just an amazing person, and I want to hear about how you two met, but and I had the pleasure of meeting him too at your summit. So Luke's published a book called A.W.A.K.E and Alive, which is about harnessing your potential through a plant-based lifestyle. And he's a former bodybuilder who did really well in competitions as a vegan. But now he's a CrossFit athlete who can do the flag, by the way.
I know.
Which is, my gosh. And he's a fitness coach with a vegan brand called the A.W.A.K.E Method. He also is the founder of the Plant Fit Summit, which is in its 3rd year we're going to be talking about because you've been a guest on it for 3 consecutive years, and it's coming out really soon. So anybody interested, sign up. It's free, right, to listen to all these amazing people.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary experience, and that is how we first got connected. Speaking of how we met in 2017, when Luke and his partner in the Plant Fit Summit, Toby, invited me to be a guest, and it was like absolutely just they have done the most extraordinary summit in bringing together every single nutritionist, dietitian, MD, philosopher, author, athletes. It's so packed. And this is their 3rd year, and it's going to go from August 31st to September 8th. And they have just a lineup to die for.
And you don't have to be in Singapore to attend, because you can access all this wonderful information and these interviews online. I mean, I've signed up for these kind of summits, and they're fantastic. If you don't have the time to hear all of them right then, you can purchase the DVDs later. But if you can hear as many as you can in this 8-day period, you can really get inspired to.
Yeah. And we're going to share at the end of the show the link to come into so they can watch.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, Luke, I wanted to start off because you look so fit and healthy now, but as a child, you really struggled with not only your weight, but your health. And can we start right there a little bit about where you were as a child in terms of that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I grew up as a sick and fat kid. I was one of the fat kids in class. And funny when I think back about those times, because I was the few fat kids in the school, and now it's not the case. But when I was younger, I had nephrotic syndrome. I had kidney disease. I also had epilepsy and chronic asthma. I remember waking up in about 4 a.m. around this time and knocking on my parents' door saying, "Mom and Dad, I can't breathe." And they would just kind of scramble up and say, "All right, we got to go to the emergency room," because I had chronic asthma, and I was just going to that room. When I was a young kid, I also had nephrotic syndrome, which is a kidney disease. And I was on a whole host of steroids, and it stunted my growth. I was literally ballooning because my kidney could not really process protein, and I was kind of peeing everything out. So as a result, the doctor got me to eat lots of protein. So really my protein journey started when I was a kid. My mom and my doctor had to tell me to eat liver. I mean, thinking in retrospect, I'm just thinking how much of that was actually potentially contributing to my illness, and I was drinking dairy and all that kind of stuff back then as well. So I didn't think about these things. But yeah, I was on a whole host of steroids, and I spent a lot of my younger years in hospital.
So you, in your teen years, you started working out, and you got into the gym and bodybuilding. You were still eating even though you were in Singapore, a very Western diet.
I sure
right?
was.
Can you talk to us a little bit about with the lifestyle you were living as a teenager, with food and fitness?
Yeah, I think for me, like I said, protein was always my big thing. And one of my favorite meals was steak, baked potato and steak. And I always told my dad I really wanted to go steak. I called myself a carnivore. I was a really big meat eater. And one of my favorite meals was always going to Tony Roma's with my parents, and having a slab of barbecue ribs, having a full slab. So I really love meat, and we used to go to places like Hard Rock Cafe, because all that Western
they have all
food
these
was
in Singapore, huh?
Yeah, basically all these Western brands were coming into Singapore, and I remember going to Hard Rock Cafe and going to a few other places, and they had like a bucket of chicken wings, and me and my friends would finish like 50, and then at the same time, I was buying like whey protein and all that kind of stuff. And just thinking back in retrospect, I was like, oh my goodness, what was I doing?
You and I have a parallel story in a few things. But very much, I think most people think that athletes or fitness folks sort of enter eating plant-based via the health and performance route. And I would say, it seems like maybe 80 or 90%, that's pretty true. And you and I entered through the justice, the animal justice standpoint. Will you tell us about that, how this lifestyle became something that you are so valiantly passionate about today? What happened to you?
So yeah, I was having 2.2 pounds of meat a day, cycling through, like I had a pork day, beef, chicken, fish, cycling through a whole host of bacon and sausages for breakfast. I just look at the food that I used to have. I'm just absolutely disgusted and really depressed at how I used to think about food and animals. So yeah, moving forward, and then I think I met my wife around the same time I met my wife. and she was following my lifestyle. She wasn't really a big meat eater, but she was following my high protein lifestyle. She was an athlete as well. And she was having, like with me in the morning, she was having a steak and a knob of butter because we were afraid of carbs. So at 5 a.m., we grilled a steak, a knob of butter, and that was our breakfast. And I was following like a meat and nut kind of breakfast so that I had a handful of nuts. So it was just so heavy and I was really lethargic. And because of that, she had digestive issues. Well, no wonder. And then subsequently, she discovered a whole plant-based lifestyle through a post that a friend put on Facebook saying that, she's starting to feel a lot better moving towards a plant-based diet. And that's how she entered a plant-based diet, through a post on Facebook. And fast forward, she experienced a significant change in just a few short days. Once moving towards a 100% vegan diet, and I was really inspired. Okay, what's going on? She had digestive issues a few days ago, and eliminating meat, going to a fully 100% plant-based lifestyle, she was just feeling a lot more energetic. So
do you remember what those first couple meals were? Because people want to know, overnight going from steak and a pat of butter and a handful of nuts. What did she eat those next couple of days?
She started eating just a whole bunch of fruits, really bananas, whole bunch. But because I think back in the day when we were at a cafe having like, our bacon and eggs and our knob of butter and our avocado, and we looked across the room there, and there was a couple having fruits for breakfast. I'm just like, oh my goodness, are they having fruits? This is too much sugar in there. And I was in that kind of mentality. So she went over there to that other table in that sense, and she started to have a bowl of fruits. And all of a sudden, she felt a surge of energy. And because she eliminated the animal products from her diet, her digestive issues went away, her inflammation went away. She just performed so much better. She changed, and then she shared with me this book called The Food Revolution by John Robbins. And I read that book, and that opened my eyes to a plant-based diet and how it was more sustainable, ethical, and healthy. And that was like, that's interesting. It really didn't really push me over the fence in that sense. I was just quite inspired. So, oh wow, that's interesting. But around the same time, my friend knew that I was kind of on the fence and on this whole journey. He said, maybe you should watch this documentary. I watched this documentary. It really, really opened my eyes. And the documentary is called Earthlings. And so one night I got it online, and Emily and I just sat on the couch and watched Earthlings, and I was absolutely horrified. Horrified.
Will you tell us, for our listeners and viewers that don't know about the documentary Earthlings, can you tell us a little bit about what affected you so much, what it's about?
I think so many things, because obviously from leather to how animals were treated as commodities, and I always think back about the time when I visited Vietnam, and I remember seeing little dogs stacked on cages and at the back of a motorbike, just stacked like they were just like they were just products, and I was just so horrified. And when I watched Earthlings, I finally connected that those dogs that I felt compassion for were the same animals that were out there being conditioned to me to think like they were food. So all of a sudden I made that connection that the dogs and the cows and the chickens that were just mutilated, and the animals that were mutilated for leather, for everything. I was just like, oh my goodness, I just felt so disgusted, because, there I was, this bodybuilder telling my vegetarian clients to eat meat or fish because of protein, and chicken because they were lacking protein. And I was eating so much meat, and I just was so disconnected. And I think after that documentary, Emily couldn't watch most of it, and she was just crying. After that, after the film ended, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to contribute to that anymore. And that was really my first step into this whole lifestyle, and that was really the moment when my new life really began.
So just going back to what Dotsie asked you about, Emily, do you remember how you did it? Because you were a very high protein, low carb guy. And now you eat a very high carb diet. You've cut your protein from 40% to 15%. You're still in incredible shape. And as a competitive bodybuilder, you went vegan too. So what were your first meals? Did you go to fruit too? And
no, I
those
tried
substances?
everything. Yeah. So I mean, for me, I did not know anything about. I mean, I thought I knew nutrition. So for me, when I actually made the switch, I just literally substituted a kilo of meat for 800 grams of tofu because I had to substitute gram for gram. I didn't understand plant-based nutrition back then. Mm-hmm. And so I just had 800 grams of beans and tofu, and believe me, Emily wasn't a fan of that because I was...
Your digestive system
was like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it takes time, folks. You got to go into it slowly.
Yeah, exactly. But the funny thing is that I had a surge of energy despite my gassiness in that because I remember after making that switch to 800 grams of beans and almost a kilo of tofu, I was starting to have carbs in that sense. I remember after a few days, almost a week, I went for my first run. You know, I back in the day I used to not want to run because I felt like it's catabolic. So I went for my first run with Emily, and after that first week, I actually ran 5K without stopping, and I was just like, my goodness, where's this energy coming from? I did not know what I was doing at the start, but I tried all sorts of different approaches. I tried vegan keto. I tried 80-10-10. I tried raw fruitarian. I tried all these different diets. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I think it was just great to understand that there are different ways to approach a plant-based diet. But to stay and thrive on a plant-based diet, I need to find a really strong why.
And so you went through all these different vegan diets. Where have you settled? What did you find works for you? Because for those who cannot see him on our YouTube channel right now, he's the opposite of withering. You still have incredible muscles. You are leaner than you were in 2010 when you were bodybuilding then, but which is what most of our listeners want anyway. Yeah. So what's your diet like now?
So my diet now, I would say if I could sum it up in a nutshell, it's a whole food plant-based diet. Whole food plant-based. In terms of my macro split, I would say I'm about 15 to 20% protein, low fat, 10 to 15% fat, predominantly carbs, as you shared earlier. And I mean, I even feel awkward saying that because I just consume sufficient calories. So if you want numbers, I train about 6 days a week, 6 days a week. So I do gymnastics, CrossFit. I consume about 3,300 calories. And like I do practice time restricted eating. So I have green smoothie. I start my day with a green smoothie. I break my fast with a green smoothie, and throughout the day I have lots and lots of fruits. And in the evening, I might have like a rice and beans, a pasta, or stir fry with tofu. Very, very simple stuff. And on the weekend, if Emily and I and Sienna, my little girl, we go to the restaurant, we might just go to like a plant-based, a vegan restaurant. So I would say a whole food plant-based diet, nuts and seeds, whole grains, legumes, obviously lots and lots of fruits and vegetables. For me, I believe that things like, these Beyond Meats, Impossible, I think they're great foods, on the weekend, but I try to keep it really whole and really clean. And because of that, because my diet is so clean, it's easy for me to maintain a low body composition, because back in the day, I was literally counting my carbs and trying to figure out my macros, and doing a ton of cardio, trying to kind of drop a few percentage body fat, like to stay around 10. But for me, all year round, I'm about 10%.
I have a little bit of a shockingly enough, philosophical question.
Dotsie's the philosopher of the team.
love
I'm
it,
the
love
nuts
it,
and
Dotsie.
bolts. I want to know what your diet is that you look so good. Dotsie's going to ask you how you feel.
Yeah, well, maybe a little bit.
I can tell you how I feel.
How do you feel emotionally about this? No, I had an experience last week, and I think that you might be the perfect person to weigh in on this, not to throw a curveball, but I was having a conversation with someone who, eats the standard American diet, and we were talking about my plant-based diet, and he was, it was interested, and we were having a great conversation back and forth, and he said, that sounds interesting. I mean, it sounds good. It's great that you feel good, but I believe in the food chain. And so I was like, okay, fair enough, whatever. I was in an airport, like I wasn't going to, take out my claws and poke his eyes out. So, okay, walked away from that conversation. It just kind of sent me on this whole, catapults me to this mental journey on what does that really mean? What really is the food chain? I mean, and most of us would say, well, we've seen it in like a science book, it's got like a gorilla and the lion at the top, or, but for some insane reason, well, humans are humans. We've put ourselves at the top just because we say we're there, like we're not. We're way down in the middle because if it's just done by size alone, we're definitely not at the top. But it got me really thinking about that there are probably many, many, many people all over the world that is just something that they believe in. And I can understand that. And I would probably have the utmost respect. I wouldn't love it, but I would have complete respect if there was a man or a woman who was like, I believe in the food chain, and they went out into the woods and with their own bare hands took down a brown bear in the mountains of Colorado and won the battle, which I don't really think any human being ever would, but won the battle, drug the brown bear back to their
we're
house.
on the top. I suppose
Exactly.
that person would have been on the top
so
of the
not
food
with all
chain.
within right.
Yeah.
Just with your bare hands. I would be like, okay, that can be your dinner. Like that's legit. But the question for you is, and what kind of got me thinking, and Alexandra, your thoughts too, is what we're doing now is so far removed from the food chain and what people consider the food chain to be, because we are breeding these animals to kill them. We're not even running out in the wild and grabbing a duck and wringing its neck and with our own. The food chain is not what's taking place. So what would be your answer to my buddy in the airport that says he believes in the food chain?
Most of the time we don't see factory farms, and as we know, when you go into the supermarket, everything is all packed neatly, and we've got euphemisms. Oh, pig is pork, it's bacon, and it's ribeye, but it's a cow, it's flesh. And I think the whole system actually conditions us to make this intentionally conditions us to make this disconnection.
I honestly think that what you said is something that I might like to say. I'm like, it's such a fascinating point. Oh, then you must salivate when a pig walks by. I mean, because that's what we would do. But everybody likes the pork ribs. Yeah. But everybody that eats meat that sees a pig, they're like, ew. And that's what we would do if we were supposed to eat them. Yeah, we would want to rip their eyeballs out and rip their flesh with our own teeth.
I saw someone post online an article of this girl getting really worked up from her fried chicken because she found a fried chicken head in there. I was like, where do you think it comes from?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. You got a little philosophical there, which we like a lot, and, right, Dotsie?
She's trying to pat me on the back.
But it sounds like it might be part of the thoughts that you have in your book, because I know your book is not only about health and fitness, but it's more than that. It's the awake. You use the term awake, and your book is called Awake and Alive, and your brand is called the A.W.A.K.E method. So can you talk to us a little bit about how veganism you believe can change people and make them more awake?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, it's about the first pathway to being connected to. I mean, I think food is energy. I think food is what we eat is what we eat is who we are. And I think when we eat positivity, we eat love, we eat with compassion, I think it affects us on a cellular level and on a spiritual level as well. And for me, I can speak from my own experience. That was my pathway. When I made that connection, I realized that all animals were equal. But beyond that, I started looking at looking at my impact. Like, okay, I started looking at, because I was taking back in the day, like branched chain amino acid capsules. It's like, oh wow, that's gelatin. That's from cows. And then I started looking at the leather that I was wearing. I don't buy any leather. And I started looking at things like, oh, there's wool, cotton. And then I started thinking about also like sweatshops, looking at my fellow man, because stuff that's made in Bangladesh and China, I around that time, I discovered the Rana Plaza disaster, where about few thousand people lost their lives because this whole sweatshop garment factory collapsed. And back in the day when I was high, and I would not really think about these things. And I started to realize that, rather than I was a part of the problem, and the problem was just so distant, I could be a part of the solution. I could be a part of the change. And I think on an energetic level, because I felt like I wasn't eating, like when an animal, just before slaughter, they're going to experience stress, cortisol, they know what's going to happen. And I think by not consuming that cortisol and that stress, you consume, I would say, positively charged foods, energetic foods, plant-based foods. I found that affected me on so many levels. This whole A.W.A.K.E method is, the first pathway is nutrition, and then the next pathway is active living.
I know there's a lot of people who struggle with depression or just feeling in a rut with how they're taking care of themselves. And your Plant Fit Summit is something that can really help people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a complete reboot. I mean, I would say maybe you should rename it the Reboot Summit. The Plant Fit Reboot.
The Plant Fit /Reboot Summit.
Yeah.
It's funny how just taking care of yourself, just doing something basic, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have the perfect diet or the perfect exercise program, but just making one or two changes can have have an effect that cascades into more better habits. And
Indeed.
Right, Luke, do you find that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like, for me, the whole journey, I wasn't trying to be a perfectionist with this whole lifestyle. I was taking it a step at a time, just tweaking things as I started going along. And the Plant Fit Summit has been amazing because, I've heard so many inspirational stories, and of course connected with so many doctors. And for me, it just makes so much sense that everybody should live and thrive on and be the best version of themselves on a physical, mental, and emotional level, and really they can do so just by shifting what they have on their plate.
Just really want to encourage people to sign up for the summit because there's so much information there.
Yes, let's
and
do
Dotsie,
that
you
link.
can hear Dotsie's amazing interview too. And
And we had
Yes.
I kind of do a duo interview with Dr. Christian Gonzalez, who has been on our podcast, and we tackle the plant-based power plate. But we ended up just talking about so many other aspects.
It's been a great.
He's brilliant.
It was such a great interview you both did, and I listened back to that interview again. I've learned so much from yourself and Dr. Gonzalez. And this summit's probably going to be, Toby and I are probably our best summit in the 3 years. I mean, we've got really, really good experts from cancer to gut health to Dr. Jim Loomis as well, who's on it. So I'm really excited for everyone to be a part of it and learn from your talk as well.
Yeah, it's going to be, it gets better every year, so it's going to be your best year yet. So people can sign up. The shortened link to sign up for this year's Plant Fit Summit from August 31st to September 8th is bit.ly. So most of you know a bit.ly link is just a shortened link. So you're going to put in your URL box bit.ly/switch for good. And that is how you can sign up and get connected, and then you'll be able to watch it for those amazing 9 days coming up very, very soon.
Thank you so much, Luke, for getting up early and
pleasure.
being on the podcast.
You can go back to bed now. Are you going back to bed? Are you gonna stay?
this-
Okay.
my day's going to start now.
Now
I'm
it's like
thinking of
5
going to
a.m. So,
CrossFit.
okay. Get cracking, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
you.
much.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.